is your job role?
So I am the set and costume designer on this production of Holes.
How did you get into becoming a designer?
I got interested in it when I was still at school. I used to really enjoy being part of all of the school shows that we would do, a couple of them every year. And I think at one point I realised I really didn't actually like acting and I wasn't very good at acting. But I still wanted to be part of it, and I always really enjoyed art at school. So my drama teacher at the time suggested that there was this thing called theatre design, because I'd never really thought about it, and I went and started looking into it then, and then I've been doing it ever since then.
The first show I went to was Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Do you remember the first show that you went to?
I think I used to go and see the pantos locally with my family when I was a kid. I know I used to go and see them, but the first show that I really remember seeing was the musical Cats, and we went on a school trip. This is a long time ago. When I was probably about 10 years old, I think, we went to see that, and that really stuck with me after I saw that.
When you're designing, how do you fit the style to the script?
You can learn a lot from the scripts in terms of how quickly it moves, because sometimes you get some plays where it's all set in one room, and that will kind of tell you one thing about how it needs to work. Something like Holes, there's lots and lots of really short scenes that happen very, very quickly. Some of them are only like a page or a couple of pages long. So from that, we kind of learnt that whatever we did needed to be very easy to move and very quick to move and very easy to change. So a lot of the decisions we made on staging Holes all came from that idea from first reading the script.
So when you went through the designer script, which bits do you think were easy and which bits do you think were a bit hard?
I don't know that any of this story is easy to try and do on stage. Lots of it was really tricky. I mean, so much of it is about digging great big holes, which is quite hard to do on stage. And there's lots of kind of walking across the desert and climbing mountains, and then there's lots of kind of jumps backwards and forwards in different time periods and different places. So it was quite complicated to try and work out exactly how we'd want to do that. But once we started working it out, it all sort of started to flow from there. Once we worked out kind of how we were going to do the digging, then that helped us make a lot of other decisions about how we'd stage the rest of the show.
What makes a good set?
A good set needs to help tell the story. It shouldn't get in the way of what the actors are doing, because they have the script and they're doing a lot of telling the story themselves. But I think a really good set can help tell the story in a slightly different way to the words that the actors are using. And I think that can be to do with the pictures that you make on stage and the way that you set things up on stage, so it kind of helps the actors work out how to use the space. But yeah, I think you can kind of set up lots of interesting things about relationships between characters and help tell a bit more of the background and the period and the place and things that the actors don't say. I think that if it's a kind of a good design, I think it can help tell lots of those things in a kind of in the background.
So in class we are making Maya masks and we are using tissue paper. What kind of materials do you need to have to make a costume?
To make a costume, we tend to use lots of different fabrics to make regular clothes, but then there'll also be things when there's kind of strange, fantastic costumes and animals and things. We kind of use any materials. I've made things before out of cardboard and plastic, and we've done some things out of metal before and kind of made frames for people that then we've kind of covered with fabric, or we've used tissue paper and covered it with things. So I think you can use kind of any materials at all. It's kind of whatever you think works best for creating the look or the shape of the character that you're trying to make.
When you read Holes, were there any key scenes that inspired your designs for the Holes?
Yeah, two scenes. Quite near the beginning, when Stanley first arrives at Camp Green Lake, and he's been on a really long journey. He's come from the city, he's been on a really long journey on the bus, and then suddenly he's in this big open space and can't see anything for miles. And then about halfway through the story, when we go back in time and we go back to Camp Green Lake as it used to be, before it was the camp, when it was actually the lake in the 1890s, and it describes exactly the same place where the camp was, but at that time it was lake and trees and lots of life there. And so it was kind of looking at those two scenes next to each other that was a big inspiration in terms of how we might try and make the world of the show, because we knew we'd have both of those scenes to have to do on stage. So it was interesting seeing how one might turn into the other.
So I'm going to secondary school next year, and so what advice would you give me if I was going to be a designer?
Get as involved in any of the school shows that you can, and that might be acting in them, or they might, if they take on students to do other bits and pieces like designing bits or helping out with the costumes or helping out backstage, do any of those things, because I think all of those jobs you'll learn lots of different little bits and pieces, and you get a really good understanding into how the whole world of making a show works, rather than just the acting bit, which we normally do when we were at school. But yeah, you'll get to learn about all the other different types of jobs and how they all come together to help make a piece of theatre.
When Halls comes to Blackpool, what designs should we look out for?
Hopefully there's lots of exciting bits that you should look out for. But obviously look out for the digging and how we do the holes, and look out for the mountain and how we do that. There's lots of puppets in the show, of all different types, so look out for them. Look out for, there's a lot of, the way that the lighting designers used a lot of weather in the show. There's lots of kind of, we're out in the desert and there's lots of kind of times of day, and see if you can see what time of day we are at any point in the show.
Have you ever been to Blackpool before?
Not for a long time. I went on a family holiday when I was when I was about 8 years old, I think. I've not been back since then. Is there anything that I should do while I'm up there?
Blackpool Tower.
And Blackpool Tower, yeah. So Blackpool Tower I saw when I was a kid, but I'll definitely go back and have another look.
And the Grand Theatre.
And the Grand
Yeah.
Theatre, of course. Definitely go and have a look around there. And then there's lots of sand in the show, so we'll have our own sandcastles on stage. So if you can choose a character from Holes, and then I'd like you to have a think about what their costume might be. How are they involved in the story? What scenes are they involved in? And also have a little bit of a think about how that works in the show. Some of the actors need to play lots of different characters, so it's useful to have a think about how they might quickly change from one thing to another. What sort of clothes might they wear? What sort of fabrics might those clothes be made out of? And how does that work to help tell the story behind all of those characters?